It's the January transfer window, and I wanted to make a video on how Manchester United is considering all offers for some key players, and nothing is off the table for them. So, Man U is at a financial crossroads, and they're considering drastic measures in order to meet the FSR, which is Financial Sustainability Regulation. Before it used to be called Financial Fair Play. I'll cover that in a little bit. But essentially, what's happening is that Manchester United are not in a position to essentially not consider serious offers for some of their key players that have come through their academy. So players that they're willing to sell right now, Alejandro Garnacho and Kobbie Mainoo, they're obviously looking to sell off Marcus Rashford, although a lot of the recent talks have been of Rashford going on loan, which could be because of the fact that his wages are so high, he might not be considering a pay cut at this time, and he's being loaned out. We know that there's been a lot of chatter of Rashford leaving. We've seen how he's been benched, how he's called out sick. There seems to be some communication behind the scenes where the club has pretty much told him, like, we're not going to play you unless we really need you. Just go ahead and go, which is why he has kind of low-key communicated the fact that he's ready for a new challenge, etc., etc. And we're seeing his camp essentially go out into other clubs in Europe and start having the conversations of what his role might look like at a different club. So we're breaking down essentially what's really going on at Old Trafford and some of the breadcrumbs that they've kind of laid out, especially since Jim Ratcliffe has kind of bought more ownership in the club, and Ineos is essentially, trying to figure out a way to get the club out of this financial hole that they're currently in. So this is why the club is considering selling some of its brightest talents. It's because of FSR. So what exactly is FSR? It's Financial Sustainability Regulations in UEFA's updated version of Financial Fair Play. The aim is to ensure clubs live within their means by limiting losses and tying spending on wages and transfer to club revenue. So clubs just essentially can't splash cash anymore without balancing their books. Under these rules, Manchester United are walking a tightrope. Last season, they recorded a loss of £113.2 million, their fifth consecutive year in the red. Despite spending around £200 million in the summer transfer window, they now need to sell some players to buy new ones, and that's where Garnacho, Mainoo, and even Rashford come into the picture. We've already kind of touched on Rashford, so we'll touch on the other two here in a bit. As a reminder, Amorim's current system doesn't have the support it needs to work smoothly, so there's also a lot of talks of other players leaving, Eriksen being one, Casemiro being another, Antony being another. There was even talk of Højlund supposedly also not fitting the system and shopping elsewhere. Xerxes is another player that has been tied with Juventus, and I believe recently he said that he wasn't leaving in the January transfer window, but the summer he might end up going. There's a lot of chatter, but the players that a lot like The Athletic and other mainstream news sites have kind of really hinted at is Kobbie Mainoo and Garnacho. So while Amorim can mold and possibly adapt some of the younger players to fit this system, like Kobbie Mainoo being one of them, it's not going to be the case for all of them. Obviously, he has a lot of players that are aged out. Rashford has kind of been picked out to be the one that's like, well, even if he could play in the system, like, we don't want him anymore. His wages are too high. We need the money. So to fully understand why Manchester United are being forced to making these tough decisions, we need to dive deeper into how financial sustainability regulations are determined for a club. Simply put, FSR looks at the club's financial health by examining its revenue, expenses, and overall profitability over a rolling 3-year period. Under UEFA's rules, clubs are allowed to report controlled losses, but there's a cap. If a club exceeds that cap, they could face penalties ranging from fines to restrictions on squad size for European competitions, and in extreme cases, even bans from participating altogether. Clubs also need to ensure that their wage bill and transfer spending don't exceed a fixed percentage of their revenue, which I believe is currently set at 70%. So Manchester United have now posted losses for 5 consecutive years, including a $113.2 million loss last season. Even though they remain one of the world's richest clubs in terms of revenue, their spending habits have outpaced their income, especially with recent big money signings like Casemiro, Antony, and Ugarte. Here's where it gets tricky. If United stay in the red and continue to breach FSR limits, there risk serious repercussions. In addition to potential fines from UEFA and the Premier League, staying in the red could prevent them from signing top-tier talent, which is something that they definitely need in this January transfer window. Another reason that it kind of puts them in a precarious position is that sponsors might hesitate to renew deals, and the overall value of the club could start to decline, making it harder to financially compete with Europe's elite clubs. To avoid the scenario, United must reduce their wage bill and either offload players for profit or attract higher revenue streams. Selling academy products like Garnacho, Mainu, and Rashford is a tempting option because, as we mentioned earlier, they represent pure profit in accounting terms, helping to balance the books without additional spend. What this means is that there was no transfer fee associated with those players, so therefore anything that they make is considered pure profit. This is also why you see such drastic moves like the mid-season price hike in tickets, and this video is not to justify that move by the club. I'll have a separate video kind of tackling that in a few days, but this video is to say, like, hey, there have been breadcrumbs all throughout the season that Manchester United have been taking these actions because of FSR. So in an effort to bolster their financial standing, Manchester United implemented a mid-season increase in matchday ticket prices, raising them from £40 to £66 per game. The adjustment applies uniformly with no concessions for children or pensioners and has been met with significant backlash from supporters. What this means is that basically they up the price for everyone and they're not doing discounts for seniors or for children like most sporting events and most clubs do. From a financial perspective, the club argues that this price hike is a necessary measure to enhance revenue streams and comply with financial sustainability regulations. Given United's recent net loss for the 12 months ending in June 30th of 2024, increasing matchday income is seen as a strategy to mitigate financial deficits. Matchday revenue constitutes a significant portion of the club's income alongside broadcasting and commercial deals. By elevating the ticket price, United aims to boost this revenue segment, thereby improving their financial metrics in line with the FSR requirement. While the immediate financial impact of the ticket price increase may provide some relief, it's crucial for the club to balance short-term financial strategies with long-term fan engagement and loyalty. Sustainable financial health should not come at the expense of the supporters who form the backbone of Manchester United's legacy. And this is why a lot of the fans have been protesting and have felt betrayed by the club, because they've stuck with the club through a lot of the worst periods that have existed for United, and they have been met with pretty poor football, player signings that haven't made a lot of sense, managers coming and going, and then a mid-season price hike when they were in a losing streak and they haven't really been performing all that well. So there's kind of like one of those things here where it's like they're doing like evil things for the greater good, but then at the same time it's like, well, like, is this really the greater good? Like, it feels like it's coming at a cost of the loyalty of the fans, which in the long term could cut into the revenue stream, especially if people just can't afford the games anymore. So we're going to move and talk about why Garnacho and Mainu, which most of you already know because at the beginning of this video I said they're academy players, so they're pure profit. They're two of United's most exciting young prospects. Both players came through the academy. Mainu is a technically gifted midfielder and has been gaining prominence under Ruben Amorim. He's featured 8 out of Amorim's 13 matches and has shown flashes of brilliance, especially in big games against Manchester City and the most recent game against Liverpool. However, his current contract runs until 2027, and while there's an option to extend, there have been no talks about fresh terms yet. I believe the most current rumors have been that Chelsea's interested in him, but another rumor that has kind of come out of the Twitter sphere is that he's asked for £200,000 a week or something like that in wages, which is almost as much as Marcus Rashford. Marcus Rashford, I believe, is on £300,000 a week. So the club is definitely not going to do that. I mean, that seems kind of like out of pocket. Interestingly, Chelsea have been linked with Mainu, but it's nothing more than just admiration at this stage. If United decide to cash in, he will be short of suitors. So there's a lot of clubs that are very interested in Kobbie Mainu right now. Garnacho, on the other hand, signed a contract extension last year, keeping him at the club until 2028. Despite this, his role under Amorim has been inconsistent. He's made 11 appearances, but only started 4 games. Amorim's system hasn't quite suited Garnacho's direct style, with the youngster often deployed in unfamiliar roles like wing-back. Now, shifting to Marcus Rashford, another player who could be on the move. Unlike Garnacho and Mainu, United are actively working on an exit strategy for Rashford. He's 27 years old, and he told Henry Winter during an interview that he's ready for a new challenge. There's a lot of nitty-gritty that I covered in a former video. You can catch that in the link in the description. His camp has already held talks with AC Milan and Juventus, and there's a lot of back and forth there, nothing concrete. I don't think that the Italy League is a bad choice for him, but he's already talking to other Premier League clubs, and he's also talking to the Bundesliga. I think what he really wants, though, is to have consistent play time and to make it back into the England camp, which he's kind of fallen out of because of his last season with Manchester United. So Rashford's departure wouldn't just bring in transfer revenue, but it would also significantly reduce United's wage bill. He's on £300,000 a week, I believe. So again, it frees up a lot of money for them. So Ruben Amorim's system has also played a role in the uncertainty around a lot of the players. I've already kind of mentioned it, but again, Amorim favors a 3-4-3 setup. Sometimes he'll play like a 3-4-2-1. It doesn't suit Garnacho or Mainoo. Garnacho's attacking instincts don't align perfectly with the defensive responsibilities required in this system. Same thing with Antony. A lot of people were asking Amorim if he could turn Antony into a wingback, and Antony, I don't know if Antony's style fits anybody. So there's that as well. And again, Mainoo is, while he's been working really well, he just lacks that top tier, that top tier athleticism, and a lot of people are wondering his long-term fit in the squad. Despite these tactical mismatches, Amorim has shown faith in both players. There's even talk of a partnership between Mainoo and Manuel Ugarte in the midfield, something that I believe was played most recently in the Liverpool game and seemed to work out really, really well. Both of them kind of playing off of each other in a good way. The harsh reality is that Manchester United needs to balance its books. After years of overspending and underperforming, they're under pressure to comply with FSR. So again, they have to sell these players if there's serious offers on the table, because they need to stay within the financial limits and they need new funds for new signings. Like I mentioned before, Casemiro, Antony, Joshua Zirkzee, and even Højlund have been linked with potential exits, but it's all rumors at this point. I think with Casemiro actually being the closest one to leaving. Another rumor, like I mentioned earlier, is Eriksen. Again, just very aged out players who, you know, their time with the club has pretty much has reached its end. Their consistency and their performances haven't been that great. We just think back to Casemiro and Eriksen in that midfield against Newcastle. It was a disaster. So I think that it's time for them to kind of go off and, you know, for new adventures. Unsurprisingly, the news hasn't really gone well with the fans in terms of Garnacho and Mainoo. People have kind of become attached to these academy players. You obviously have the same kind of reaction with Marcus Rashford, but Rashford has kind of fallen out a little bit with the fans because of the fact that they call him lazy. Like, there's a lot of people who hate on Rashford and his performance because he doesn't really track back all that well. There are times when it doesn't seem like he's in the game or like loves football, and being the most expensive player in the roster and being on such high wages, it's brought on a bit of an animosity from some of the fans towards Rashford. Experts have pointed out that United are in a tough spot. David Ornstein from The Athletic noted United aren't actively looking to sell, but they can't afford to dismiss serious offers either. So it's a delicate balancing act between staying competitive on the pitch and meeting financial obligations off of it. So what exactly is next for Manchester United? Well, the January transfer window is here. The club will need to make some tough decisions. It's already kind of bubbling over for Rashford. I haven't heard anything about Garnacho or Mainoo, but if I do, I will make another video. One thing's for sure, this isn't the end of the story. I'll be watching closely to see who stays, who goes, and how United actually navigates this financial storm, especially with Jim Ratcliffe making cuts everywhere that he can, whether that's the United charity, whether it's firing more employees, firing actual staff. In terms of like the goalkeeper scout was fired recently, Christmas bonuses have been cut, so there's a lot of cutting that's going on here. So it's going to be interesting to see how they weather the storm from a club perspective and from an on-the-pitch perspective. But let me know what you think. Do you think United should sell Garnacho and Mainoo? Do you think they should sell Rashford? Why is Rashford going on loan instead of being sold? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll be back on the next one. Peace.